the sweet calm of perfect peace reigned. Everywhere, the kind little birds made their cheerful trills heard in constant praise of the Creator. All nature at flowering seemed to proclaim a kingdom of eternal joy. Animals in union jumped everywhere, always submissive to man, the Lord of that lovely paradise. Everything was happiness for the couple, but this became more intense in the rotation of those spring days. The tree, which with its beauty colored the sky forewarning the dark nights, also announced the time of the Eternal's daily visit. Together, in the light of his presence, they spent a long time in happy conversation. With courage, the couple told the Lord the amazing wonders that they discovered every day in nature. God, with love, discovered the meaning of each being. How grateful they were for the beautiful lessons learned at his feet. As each day passed, there was greater love, respect, and admiration for the great Creator. How good he had been, bringing them into existence and granting them a home so full of delicacies. When they woke up to the joys of each day, the caresses and sweet song of the Eternal came to mind, which made them fall asleep every night. The life of Adam and Eve in Eden was not idle. Garden care was recommended to them. Its occupation was not annoying. On the contrary, it was pleasant and invigorating. The Creator had indicated work as a source of benefits for man, in order to occupy the mind and strengthen the body, developing all the faculties. In mental and physical activity, man found a high pleasure. It was common for the young couple to receive visits from celestial beings. Visitors always had news to report and questions to ask. They spent a long time hearing about them, talking about the wonders of the kingdom of light. Through those visitors, Adam and Eve began to have extensive knowledge of Lucifer's rebellion and its eternal consequences. Visitors, Adam and Eve, always asked to be taught the harmonious heavenly songs. How they delighted to join the voices to the angelic choir. In his omniscience, God had knowledge of the enemy's terrible intention. Summoning his main hosts, he revealed to them with regret the imminent danger that loomed over the universe. Satan was to ambush in order to take man to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Before that revelation, the children of the light were fearful, for they knew the tremendous ease of Satan in linking innocent creatures and binding them in their meshes of death. In the solemn council, they decided to send, urgently, messengers to warn the man of great danger. 2 powerful angels were charged with that decisive mission. Immediately, commissioned messengers stormed through the gates of Jerusalem, reaching the bosom of infinite space. In moments, they passed immensities, crossing galaxies in the course. They entered the tunnel of the constellation Orion, approaching the new system. They could now see a short distance from the blue planet where the destiny of the universe was to be determined. In Eden, there was relaxation. The young couple continued in their innocent activities, enjoying the pleasure of a happy life. They were far from thinking that at that moment all the children of the light were tense, thinking about their threatened future. Then they saw in the clear sky the sign of the approach of the heavenly visitors, and they raised their arms in joyful salutation. However, each other, for not seeing the same joy in their countenance, visitors brought an expression of anxiety on their faces that they could not understand. They tried to change the sad faction, telling them the new discoveries made in paradise. The messengers, still not having time available as on other occasions, interrupted them with words of warning. Satan would ambush them in order to take them to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If they heard temptation, they would succumb the entire creation into the abyss of eternal chaos. The angels reminded them that the kingdom had been entrusted to them as a sacred deposit, owing, in a life of faithfulness, to honor him who for love was stripped, placing himself in a position of host of the human being. Adam and Eve should be firm before the insinuations of the enemy, for thus they would seal the eternal victory of the kingdom of light. Speaking to them of the happy reward that would follow their triumph, the angels revealed that it was God's plan to transfer the heavenly Jerusalem to earth. There, again coupled to paradise, it would remain forever. And man, submissive to the Creator, would reign forever and ever on Mount Zion, in the midst of the praises of the universal hosts. More all that depended entirely on human positioning in the face of the temptations of the enemy, who would do everything to snatch the kingdom. Adam and Eve were afraid to know Satan's plans, but they were comforted to learn that he could not do him any harm, forcing them to eat the forbidden fruit. If, however, he tried to intimidate them with his power, all the Eternal's hosts would come to his aid. The messengers of the light concluded their mission by recommending the couple to remain vigilant, always keeping in mind the responsibility that rested upon them. They should not be separated from each other, not even for a moment, because they alone could be seduced. Adam and Eve, grateful for the angel's warnings, joined the voices in a song of promise and an eternal victory. They were sure that they would never abandon the blessed Creator, hearing the tempter's voice. Encouraged by the human promise, the two messengers returned to the bosom of the celestial Jerusalem, where, together with the holy hosts, they would anxiously await the desired triumph. Satan saw the messengers approaching paradise and heard the song of man promising an eternal victory. That song made his envy and hatred increase so that he could not contain them. He then told his followers that he would soon silence that irritating voice. He would do everything to transform human praise into blasphemies of the Creator. With deep bitterness, Adam sought to know the reason that had led her to rebel against the Eternal. Eva promptly began to tell him the fantastic story of the wise snake. Satan knew that snake story would never convince man to eat the fruit of the forbidden tree. He needed to find a subtle way to take him to seal his lot by following in his wife's footsteps. Having Eva under his power, he resolved to make her the tempting object. I would wait for the right moment to link it. On the day you eat of it, you will certainly die. The memory of this sentence left Adam very distressed. The expectation of seeing her beloved dying in his arms was too much to bear. This affliction, however, was diminishing, seeing that she remained happy and affectionate at her side, as if no evil had happened to her. Relieved, Adam smiled again, corresponding to the affections of his companion. He surrendered to the sweetest emotions, far from knowing that it was the enemy who wrapped him in those hugs. At that moment of enchantment, Eva began talking about her experience with the science of good and evil. She told him about the treasures of wisdom that had been opened to her. In his new kingdom, he would live very happy. However, that happiness would be incomplete without the participation of her husband. He told her about the impossibility of going back in his steps and insisted that he follow her. After telling him about her decision, Eva, with a sweet smile, extended her hands containing a fruit, asking him to eat it in a demonstration of his love for her. With the tempting voice in his ears, Adam sat on the grass in deep thought. His face turned pale again and his hands trembling. He was afraid to rebel against the Creator, but at the same time he understood that he would not be able to live apart from his companion, whom he loved with infinite love. Eve was the flesh of his flesh, the extension of his being. He felt distressed having to make such a serious decision. The paleness of Adam's face was reflected in the countenance of all the faithful to the Eternal. They heard the insinuation of the enemy and perceived with horror the hesitation of man. Adam's indecision left them desperate. If he obeyed Satan's proposal, all happiness would be eternally banished. In the decisions of the human being was the destiny of the entire universe. Would he attend to Satan's request? After intense internal struggle, Adam looked at his companion. She had joined in promises of eternal surrender. I wouldn't leave her alone now. He would share with her the results of the rebellion. He then took a fruit from Eve's hand and, in a rash gesture, brought it to his mouth. Seeking to extinguish the voice of his conscience, which spoke of an eternal destruction, Adam threw himself into his wife's arms, enjoying the high price of his rebellion. Satan, with cries of triumph, left paradise, flying quickly with his innumerable hosts, who anxiously awaited the result of such a risky attempt. Upon learning of human misfortune, they joined in a thunderous party. They felt safe. Zion now belonged to them by right, being able there to establish an eternal kingdom, never being bothered by the laws of the Eternal. Throughout the universe, the children of light suffered and cried defeat. There has never been so much sadness and horror about the future. The voices that lived to sing praises to the Creator would now utter lamentations. The Eternal, who, overcome by infinite pain, had prostrated himself in tears at the fall of man, was not, however, surprised. Even before creating the universe, he had already foreseen that triumph of rebellion, and in his wisdom and love had idealized a rescue plan that would involve him in an immense sacrifice. Drying the tears of his crying, he set out to act mightily in favor of his afflicted faithful, preventing them from falling into the hands of the enemies. In that mysterious intervention that apparently deposed against justice, the Eternal ordered his most powerful angels to immediately circumvent the Garden of Eden, preventing Satan from taking possession of Mount Zion. Consoled before the divine manifestation, the powerful creatures, in prompt obedience, broke the infinite space, instantly surrounding paradise, in which the human being, already upset by sin, lived the blackness of a night that would be long and cruel. Being the authority of the Eternal based on justice, how could he justify his actions before the enemies? Had he not delivered the kingdom to man by his will, and he had not submitted it to Satan by free choice? While surprised, the rational creatures considered the decisive actions of God, they heard his powerful voice that, reverberating throughout the creation, brought the revelation of the great mystery. Revelation so wonderful that from that moment, for all eternity, it would occupy the mind of the faithful, being the subject for the sweetest meditations. The Eternal spoke first about the terrible condemnation that hung over man and all creation. He said that by detaching himself from the source of life, man had plunged into such a deep abyss that he could not be reached by his arm of justice and power. Humiliated and tortured by the claws of the enemy, there was no other man left beyond death, painful fruit of his spontaneous rebellion. Considering the human situation, the hosts of light saw no chance of triumph. They knew that only man could resume the enemy's dominance, returning it to the Creator. But the human being, eternally enslaved in his nature, would be incapable of such victory. In a melodious voice and full of tenderness, God revealed the plan of redemption, saying, "Truly, man will reap the fruit of his rebellion in a terrible death. I cannot, with my power, change his luck. If he acted like this, it would be unfair before my decree, but I will bring down all the condemnation on a substitute that will arise in human descent, that man will not bring into his hands the rings of death, being innocent and uncontaminated in his nature. As a representative of the human race, he will face Satan and overcome him. After triumphing in that battle, proving that love is stronger than selfishness, that truth is stronger than lies, that humility is more powerful than pride, the faithful substitute will raise victorious hands not to greet the great conquerors, but to take the cup of their condemnation from the hands of enslaved humanity. He will soak submissively the chalice of eternal death. That immense sacrifice will open to humans an opportunity to be redeemed, returning to the arms of the Creator, together with the lost dominion. The hosts, surprised at the revelation of the Eternal, inquired into the identity of that substitute. The Creator, with a loving smile, he told them, "I will be that man. My spirit will rest on a virgin, and in her a holy son will be begotten. That young man will be divine and human. In his humanity, he will be submissive to the divinity that will dwell in him. The redeemed will see in him the Father of eternity, the Creator and Redeemer, the King of kings. His name will be Yoshua, Hebrew name that translated means the eternal Savior. Assuming human nature, God could pay the high price of ransom, dying instead of sinners." The hosts of light fell silent upon knowing the plan of the Creator. The thought of seeing him submit to such a painful sacrifice in order to redeem the lost dominion was too much to bear. There was, however, no other hope of victory, except through that loving surrender. After enjoying the high price of sin, the young couple felt bad. Initially, they felt a great emptiness in the heart, which was then filled by remorse and sadness. They perceived that, inspired by greed, they had sealed their sad luck and that of all creation. They seemed to hear in the distance the groan of a defeated universe. The sun, which had filled them with life and heat on that day, was hiding on the horizon, announcing a black night. The tree, which had previously announced the happy encounter with the Creator, seemed to involve them in a sentence that they would never wake up to a new day. They dared not even look towards the top, afraid to see the ray of judgment fall on them, that would reduce them to dust. With his eyes directed to the cold ground, the sentence came to mind. On the day you eat of him, you will surely die. Desperate tears rolled down their faces as they awaited the tragic end. When considering the reason for his rebellion, Adam began to recriminate his wife for having given ears to the snake. Eve, in turn, seeking to excuse herself, threw guilt on the Creator, saying, "Why did the Eternal allow the snake to deceive me?" The love that reigned in the human heart disappeared, giving rise to pride and selfishness, which melted into resentment and hatred. His nature was no longer pure and holy, but corrupted and full of rebellion. Everything was changed. Even the gentle breeze that had previously bathed them in refreshing caresses now froze the guilty couple. The trees and flowery quarries, which were his delight, now consisted of obstacles when walking aimlessly on that night. Satan's purpose in filling the Sabbath of darkness seemed to have been fulfilled. On that night, there was not even the silver reflection of the moonlight to tell them of hope. The twinkling stars, suspended in the dark sky, were obfuscated by pain. The darkness of a long night of sin descended upon the world, shadows under which so many would crawl without the hope of a dawn. It was high night already, and the darkness seemed to wrap the sad couple in eternal shadows.